All right. Thank you everyone for joining. We'll get started in just a moment here. All right. Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us today for this webinar series. This is the second in a series of 4 webinars hosted by the AGU Hydrology Section Student Subcommittee in this annual webinar series, Navigating Academic Waters. Before I hand things off to our moderators and speakers for today, I'm going to give a brief overview of Quasi while folks are getting logged on and settled. My name is Julia Masterman. My pronouns are she, her, and I am the Education and Outreach Coordinator for Quasi. Quasi is a consortium of universities for the advancement of hydrologic science incorporated. We're a nonprofit funded in part by the National Science Foundation, and our mission is to empower the water community and advance science through collaboration, infrastructure, and education. We sustain infrastructure to enable research and collaboration, in part by hosting a data repository for water science data called HydroShare. By providing the support and infrastructure, Quasi can help researchers formulate and execute their data management plans, be effective data stewards, and meet the requirements of funding agencies. We also provide educational opportunities and infrastructure for student support. These include workshops, a summer institute for graduate students, webinar series and events like this one, a virtual university, and more. Both our data infrastructure and educational opportunities are designed to enable collaboration and interdisciplinary work. There are a few upcoming deadlines I want to point you towards as we get started here. Quasi Snow Measurement Field School is hosted with Cinter and with support from NASA. Applications are open now and will close quite soon. So if you're interested, we recommend you apply for this opportunity. It's a week-long hands-on field school hosted the first full week of January. We'll also be hosting another webinar series, a monthly webinar series starting next week with USGS, speaking with scientists who worked on the National Water Availability Assessment about aspects of that effort and how you can leverage that science for your own research. And with that, I'd welcome you to join our mailing list and connect with us online. As a reminder, this is part of a 4-part series, and we hope you'll join us for the remainder of webinars in this series next month and then in November. And finally, to today's webinar. So today's webinar is on highlighting skill sets for careers outside of academia. A huge thank you to our speakers for taking the time to join us today, and congrats or major kudos to AGUH3S for convening such a great panel. Before we get started, a few logistics. This webinar is being recorded and will be posted on the Quasi YouTube channel. Secondly, we ask that you use the Q&A functionality to submit questions to our speakers. Please feel free to add questions at any time and upvote any that are especially of interest. We'll do our best to get to as many as possible. Finally, we expect that all involved with Quasi Cyber seminars uphold the Quasi Code of Conduct and promote and maintain a professional, considerate, respectful, and collaborative virtual environment. So thank you for being a part of that. And now I will pass the mic on to our conveners to give a brief overview of H3S and kick off this webinar. Megan, take it away.
Great. Thank you so much, Julia. Thank you all so much for being here, for joining us for the second entry in this seminar series on navigating academic waters. We are really excited. It looks like we have about 88 participants currently. So thank you all for taking your time to be here today and listen to these great panelists who we'll hear from soon. Before we get started, just a little bit about the AGU Hydrology Section Student Subcommittee, aka AGU H3S. H3S is a group of motivated students and early career scientists who strive to provide student and early career hydrologists with opportunities for professional development and networking within the broader geosciences and hydrology community. I would encourage you to use the link on the slide here to check out our website and follow us on social media to hear all about the latest news, resources, and opportunities, because we have some really exciting stuff coming up. You can also come find us at AGU this year. We'll be at booth 836 and would love to chat with you more about H3S and everything we have going on. If you are interested in joining us, the applications for H3S will open up in December. That's for anyone who is an early career hydrologist or a student in hydrology who want to help expand your network and contribute to some of these goals. We'd be happy to chat with you about it at AGU, or you can reach out to us through communication on our website. As Julie mentioned, if you enjoyed this seminar, we hope you'll join us for the upcoming seminars on October 8th and November 5th. And you can also check out the Quasi YouTube channel to watch the NAW seminars from previous years. So there's a great resource there. If we can go to the next slide. Your facilitators today are myself and Ayobami, who are both part of H3S this year. I'm a PhD candidate at the University of New Hampshire, and Ayobami is a PhD student at Purdue University. And so if we go to the next slide, I'll now do a brief introduction to today's panelists. We're joined by a great group of folks. The first is Jorge Celis, who's the CEO and founder of American Prime Sustainable Solutions, which is a geospatial intelligence company that combines satellite data, AI and machine learning, and autonomous systems to deliver actionable insights for agriculture and environmental management. His research spans atmospheric rivers, drought detection, crop modeling, and greenhouse gas monitoring. Prior to his current role, he also served as a postdoctoral researcher at the University of Oklahoma, where he applied AI to sociohydrology and severe weather impacts. We're also joined by Helen Melinda Lawrence, who is the Groundwater Services Group Manager for LRE Water, based in Denver, Colorado. Before joining the LRE Water team, Helen worked as a hydrogeologist at the U.S. Geological Survey and the Colorado Division of Water Resources. She's passionate about community science broadly and is an active member of the Colorado Groundwater Association's Education and Outreach Committee. We also have Kelsey McDonough, who's the Flood ID product lead at the Water Institute, where she guides the strategic development and deployment of operational flood intelligence technology to help safeguard people, assets, and infrastructure during flood events. Kelsey is a solutions-focused hydrologist and technology leader with over a decade of experience bridging research, private sector innovation, and international collaboration to build resilience in the face of climate and flood risk. As a former Fulbright alumna to Australia and an advocate for a sustainable water future, she's driven by a passion for connecting science, technology, and people to shape more adaptive and resilient communities. And last but not least, we have Paul Miller, who is the Service Coordination Hydrologist, for the Colorado Basin River Forecast Center in Salt Lake City, Utah, where he coordinates with stakeholders and academics on CBRFC products and services. Prior to this role, he also worked for the U.S. Bureau of Reclamation in the Lower Colorado region for about 7 years, where he investigated the impacts of climate change on the Colorado River Basin. His dissertation work also focused on assessing the impacts of climate change on hydroclimatology and river operations at the Colorado River Basin. And he's also taught introductory hydrology and fluid mechanics courses at the University of Nevada, Las Vegas. So I'll thank all of the panelists again for being here. If there's anything that you'd like to add to your introduction, please feel free to do so as we go along. But at this time, I'll be handing the microphone off to Ayobami to kick off our Q&A section. And I would remind you, if you're in the audience as we go along, I'd encourage you to use the Q&A feature to ask any questions that you have for the panelists, and we will direct them to them at the first opportunity. So thank you.
Thank you, Megan. I wanted to say thank you to all of our panelists once more for joining us today. We have a wide range of experience from our panelists, and I believe we'll be learning and gaining a lot from their experiences today. So to get started with, I would like to ask each of our panelists to tell us about what led them, at what point did they think and decide that they were going to explore a career outside of academia, and what led them to that decision. So to get started with, I would love Kelsey to kickstart that up with for us. Thank you.
Sure, thanks. So when I was doing my PhD, I always thought that I would stick in academia and become a professor. That's kind of the track that they put you on. And I went and I did 2 postdocs. I did a postdoc in Germany and a postdoc in Australia. And it was really when I was in Australia, I started thinking about, I don't know that I want to keep going on this path anymore. I really feel like I can make more of an impact in the private sector with the work that I want to do. And I felt like my skill sets were a little bit better suited to the private sector than to research in academia. And so I started exploring different research paths at that time and ended up joining the tech sector and moving back to the United States and doing the work that I do now. But it really took some internal reflection on, what I want my career to look like and where I felt like my strengths could be most benefited in the world, whether it's, a true research position or, something that is a combination of research and business and working in, communication and other things, and I felt like I would thrive better in a different environment. And so um, I made the jump and I don't regret it one bit. I love what I do and I feel like we make a lot of really great impact in the world with the work that I do. So
Thanks for sharing, Kelsey. Where do you want to go next, please? Ray, do you want to go next? Or Ellen could go next, if you can hear me. Ellen, you can go next if you can hear me.
Sounds good. I can. So similarly, I was in a PhD program at School of Mines here in Colorado, and I think it took me a little bit of time to, as Kelsey mentioned, a little bit of introspection and just self-reflection. I had started out thinking that I would also be a professor. I've always been passionate about communicating science and just teaching different scientific concepts. But I think I realized that I work actually best a little one-on-one or in small groups. And I don't really like to stand at the front of a classroom is one part of it. The second part was as I was working on my research, I was really finding that I was a little discouraged by a little bit how abstract some of my research could be and how kind of insular the community was of the research that I was doing. And so I was really looking forward to finding a way to do science that had a kind of real world impact. And so I was thinking about where I could find myself, and I actually reached out to different consultants and different governmental agencies to see what their day-to-day looked like. And it was much more of a, communities and stakeholders have questions, and how do we have science that can inform their decisions and answer their questions? And that's kind of how I found my way out of academic science and into more applied science field.
Sharing, Ellen. Paul, do you want to go next, please?
Sure, and thanks everybody for having me. I think similarly, I was pursuing my master's degree, and I actually had a really terrible experience in grad school with my master's program. I had a really terrible advisor. We just didn't get along with each other, but the part I loved the most was being a graduate assistant and being able to be a TA for classes and helping undergraduate students. And so, I finished that program and I was like, oh, I just need to get back home. And I'm from Las Vegas. So I was looking around different programs and trying to get back to the West. And I stumbled into this great program. At the time, it was called the SCEP program. Now it's called Pathways, I think, but it's a program between federal government agencies and universities. And so what I was doing was I was working for the Bureau of Reclamation while doing research at UNLV with a really awesome advisor, Dr. Tom Piota, who's at Chapman University now. And I think that's when I first started seeing that doing research that's applied and for a greater common good, something where I'm going to publish this article and then it's going to sit on a shelf, or I'm going to do this research and then it's going to sit on a shelf for somebody else to pick up. I think a lot like Helen said, you get kind of in this insular community. And so working for the federal government and being able to do applied research and seeing work be applied to develop policy or inform stakeholders on best ways to manage water and that sort of thing, that felt really fulfilling to me. And, I can still teach, every now and then I'll adjunct a course or something like that. But, and I love working with the students, but there's still lots of opportunities in the federal government to work with students. And so I've tried to do that here in my role at the Weather Service. And yeah, so that's kind of how I got into that. I just didn't want to chase money and just do research for the sake of doing research. I really wanted to do something applied.
Thank you so much, John. Jorge, it's your turn. Thank you.
Thank you. So, similar to what Paul was saying, I enjoyed doing the research. It was always fun. But during my master's and my PhD, something that was very frustrating for me is that after spending so much time, so many hours, and all that effort, everything after the paper, that was it. So I remember we did a great methodology to detect droughts. And we did the paper, we published it, and that was it. It was the end of the story. So for me, that was very disappointing, and that made me start looking into different options. So I looked into consulting. So consulting was a great opportunity to make sure that all the research work and all that applied development that we're doing will have end use. However, the pace of consulting is really fast paced, and if you care a lot about the work that you're doing, then you create that baby, you give it to that company that is hiring your consulting firm, and that's it. So that one of the main reasons for me to try to start something into the private sector was because I want to create something that can make life better for a group of people. And as time evolve and the needs of those people evolve, research evolve and the development evolve. So on my end, that was what motivated me to start an enterprise, and that gave me more control. But when you are working with an organization outside academia, in my opinion, it helps that to tailor the work that you do going beyond just a paper and have that applied impact. And then I enjoy talking to people, so it is great to see how all that hours that you are spending, all that effort is contributing to the well-being of a group of society. And yeah.
Thank you so much for sharing. As a current PhD student with an end goal of also going to the industry, I feel so happy hearing that I have other people that have been through this and decided to follow what they're truly and genuinely passionate about, even after having a PhD. And I'm sure we have students on here listening that also probably doing their PhD, not just masters, and are considering to go to the non-academic routes. Thank you guys for sharing. So to continue, I would like to ask each of you what aspects of your career so far in your journey that you find the most rewarding. And I would love maybe Ellen can get us started with this.
Yeah. So right now, I work as a hydrogeologist and then also the manager of a small team of hydrogeologists here in Denver, Colorado. And our team, we do applied science for a lot of small municipalities in the Denver area and counties, sometimes the state. And so for me, what I find the most rewarding is kind of twofold, but it all circles around that human connection. So one of the big things for me is that stakeholder engagement and being able to ask people what their questions are, or communities what their questions are, and then develop a study that both answers their questions, but then also meets them where their budget is. And so we will tailor our projects to meet their needs and also their budgets. And where we can, we'll apply for grants. So there's that stakeholder engagement side of things. And I think the other kind of aspect of the people that isn't unique to my situation, but it's a really fortunate kind of just consequence of me becoming a manager, is being able to support our early career scientists and just allowing them to explore different fields, subfields within hydrogeology, and just support them in any way they can to reach their potential and their growth. And so those are the two favorite parts of my job.
Thank you, Elliot. Paul, do you want to go next and share with us what you found most rewarding?
Sure, and I'm going to copy a lot of what Helen said. Even though it's not a very large part of my job, my favorite part is definitely when we get to work with the students and early career scientists. We have a Hollings program where occasionally we'll get a student here for the summer and we can work with them on a research project. But in addition to showing them what's going on at the National Weather Service, we have partners all over the place. We have all these stakeholders, and a lot of them are very local. And getting to arrange trips to go visit USGS sites or SNOTEL sites that the Natural Resources Conservation Service runs, or going to the federal building and speaking with folks at Reclamation. One year we even had some students drive down to my former employers down in Boulder City, and they took a tour of Hoover Dam and that kind of stuff. And just being able to link them up with all of these different professionals and different paths, that's been my favorite part by far. In my day-to-day jobs, working with the stakeholders, kind of trying to understand their needs, how do we make our products and our data and our work even more applicable or more informative? That's that's like the main part of my job, and I really enjoy that. It's new, it's different. I've met some really great people that also care about managing water resources in the West, and just being around really great people that want the same things.
Thank you, Paul, for sharing. Jorge, do you want to go next and share your experience with us?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Thank you.
Sorry. So one of the things that I love the most is that you're always learning. So it feels that the industry moves so fast, and it is like a constant competition. So you have to be paying attention of what other people are doing, and like, okay, there is a new AI technique, there is this new model, there is this improvement. So okay, we need to make things better. We need to, we need to always be learning and advancing those developments. So that is very exciting. And one of the things that I enjoy the most is being able to see the direct impact of some of that research. Because, for example, when we do things correctly, when we're working with farmers and with producers, we're able to help them save money. And as a personal goal, we're able to help them to use less chemicals, which translates into less chemicals into our food, and it helps their bottom line. So it's very exciting. So I enjoy seeing that impact. So if we do things correctly, that we have those positive results, and that also adds to some of the responsibility. So when we focus more on research and proposing a new method or writing a manuscript, sometimes if we make a mistake, it's okay. However, if we make a mistake here, then that costs people's money and costs people's time and also affect the reputation. So there is a new layer of responsibility that at the end, when things are being done correctly, is very rewarding.
Thank you so much for sharing. Kelsey, you have the floor.
Thanks. I think for me, so the work that I do, I'm in the operational hydrology sector, and we're delivering technology to people who are immediately dealing with a flood event. So whether it's from a hurricane or some other convective storm event, and being able to help them bridge with our technology, all of the great research that has gone on to be able to allow us to have operational hydrology to tell them where it's going to flood ahead of time and translate that into impacts in terms of like who to evacuate, what roads to close, where can we put up deployable infrastructure so that people can protect their assets. And then seeing after the fact, talking with first responders and people about how that technology just changed their approach entirely. I mean, it really just is so amazing to see what we can do with science and how powerful it can be. And that is really so cool. It's just a really cool part of my job. The other part of it is I also really love working with early career scientists and students. It was something that I missed for a while when I first decided to leave the academic world, because that is what I loved the most. And I think that was the hardest part about my decision to leave, because I really love to teach. I love to work with younger students, and So I found other ways to do that through opportunities like this, through working in Quasi Summer Institute program and, other things, just working with early career scientists and just professionals in my day job. And so that's been really rewarding just to help guide people where they want to go in their career. Because when I was doing my PhD, I always felt like really kind of lost with where I wanted to go. I think it's because I hadn't figured out that this private sector path was an option. And so it's nice to now talk to people and help them figure out their path and support them in that. So.
For sharing. It's interesting to see that everyone is making impact on other people through the work they are doing, and that's what has been driving your success and progress so far. So my next question will be that looking back at your whole experience in your career outside of academia, what are the skills like tools, techniques, or work attitude that you think or you consider were very critical to your career success so far in your journey? And if Ore want to get started with this one this time around, thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. So I would say that having a proactive mindset and curiosity are essential. So, for example, just to give you an example, not that long ago, we hired somebody to work with us. And one of the biggest challenges was that the person was wanting everything spoon fed. And the pace of work between academia and industry is very different. So with academia, we usually have 6 months or a year to work on a specific topic and that and produce a result. In industry, the pace is much quicker. So it is important to don't be afraid to make mistakes, but kind of pivot, say like, hey, this didn't work. So what else can I do? There are these new techniques, and coming out with different approaches. So I would say that something critical for career success outside academia is to be able to do that problem solving and being adaptable. So even if there's something that you didn't learn how to do during your PhD, I would say there are so many resources outside that can be helpful and be always kind of adapting and being able to be proactive. So don't ask somebody to give you an instruction of how to do things, but mostly like propose how you can do things while also being coachable and listening.
Thanks for sharing, Ore. I'm sorry if you couldn't hear me earlier. I apologize for that. Does Paul want to go next on this question?
Sure. I think one skill that's undervalued, especially when we're thinking about like scientific careers and our role as scientists, is um, the more liberal arts part of your education that's growing up. When I think back on like my undergraduate education, which I was at the University of Arizona, and I think at how much I appreciated my Middle Eastern humanities course, my jazz history classes, my English classes, um, and because I know my title is service coordination hydrologist, but that's really just a fancy way of saying I'm the outreach guy. And so um, being able to work with people and talk with people um, and also just listen sometimes, because sometimes you're just dealing with competing interests from different stakeholders and different groups. And you're like, okay, where do we find the middle ground, the common ground? Where can we make the most people happy? Where can we build consensus for what we're doing? Even internally in the office, sometimes we've got disagreements on how we should pursue something different. And I think being able to communicate, you know, both orally and through written language and through presentations and that sort of thing. I think those skills get overlooked a lot of times when we're just thinking about like these hard sciences and can we crunch the numbers and can we get the data out there. But I think working with people, especially when you do go outside of academia and work with other folks that are not, who may not have that academic background, I think that's a big skill that I think sometimes we undersell as scientists.
Thank you so much, Paul, for sharing. Helen?
So I agree both with Paul and Jorge wholeheartedly. And Jorge, on our team, we actually have a word or like a phrase for what you are calling. We call it. Oh, I'm sorry, I just like lost my train of thought. But we call it effective excellence. So in academia, you can spend, like you said, months or years working on something, and we don't have that luxury in our field. But we are trying to do our best and create our best product with the time and the resources that we have allotted, and then be okay with what that looked like and tailor that to what resources we have. And that, I think, is kind of a critical skill, especially for folks coming out of graduate school, because it's hard. You can always find the flaws in what you've done. But focusing on, what you did right is great, and building on that and just having that attitude is really wonderful. And then the other thing I was going to say was something that I've always been really goal oriented, kind of throughout my career, starting at a young age in school. I would always check in on like what my goals were, and was I, working towards that goal? And if not, I needed to kind of like pivot or change. But the key thing I wanted to highlight was when you connect your goals with a community, as Paul was mentioning, you really unlock something different. So if you get that consensus on what your goals are, and then have a whole team working towards it and bringing their different perspectives and experiences to the problem, it just brings it to a completely different level. So being able to still remain goal oriented, but be a team player, I think is just a really wonderful thing.
And then Kelsey?
Yeah, I think the perspectives everyone has brought so far have been really valuable. I would definitely echo what Paul said. I think soft skills are so important and so underrated. I look back at some things that I did during grad school, like I was a graduate student ambassador and would give tours of campus to prospective grad students. And the skills that I learned in doing that I didn't realize at the time, but the ability to like have a conversation and hold it for over an hour with people that I had just met has served me so well throughout my career in being able to communicate, to strike up conversation, to network, to be able to disseminate complex scientific concepts into like easily digestible tidbits for non-scientists. I mean, those are the things that I really think make you stand out in the private sector. When people see you have a PhD after your name, they know you can do science well, right? Like they know you've been trained on that part. It's the other pieces that I think that they're like, well, are you going to be one of those scientists that is unable to be a team player and is just like head down, super hyper focused on this one thing? Or are you going to be one of those people that can branch out and learn new things and share about what you're doing and be a really effective communicator? And so I think those soft skills are so undervalued, and they're really important to try and build up if you have the time and the chance. And then I think the other thing is don't be afraid to keep learning and learn about things that are totally unrelated to your PhD. My job now is a little less focused on science and a little more focused on business. So I recently just took a course at Oxford to learn about business because I had no clue some of these terms that people were talking about in my day-to-day job, and I needed to find out what they were. And so if your career path is something that's maybe a little bit non-traditional, take advantage of the time that you have now and maybe learn about some of these other concepts that can serve you as you advance in your career and grow. So definitely don't ever stop learning, and learn about things that are totally unrelated to what you are studying out at your PhD now.
Thank you, Kelsey. It's safe to say learning never ends. And it's also good to also highlight like what you just said about the soft skills for students to ensure they like make use of every opportunity they have while they're still in school. So like get leadership opportunity experiences, volunteering experiences, because they're extremely very helpful. As we can see that it has helped some of our panelists here today. Majority of our panelists have spoken about how some of these experiences they had while in graduate school helped them. So I would also say for every student listening, every opportunity you have, endeavor to grab them. So that takes me to our next question, which is going to be that want each of our panelists to share with us suggestions that they have for students that are currently considering a career outside of academia, and for those who are just starting their job search. Like, tell us about what the skills and the qualities that can help us to stand out to hiring managers. What worked for you during your time, what you've seen worked for people over the years, and you can also add to it suggestions for resources that could help for them to get access to these jobs, like platform or websites to search for these jobs as well. Thank you. And I would say anyone can go next, but yeah, maybe Kelsey, do you want to kickstart that?
Sure. In terms of platforms, if you don't know about Josh's Water Jobs, you should check it out. It is probably my number one resource. I still check it every 2 weeks when he comes out with a job list because I just want to see what's happening out in the hydrology world. So definitely recommend looking at Josh's Water Jobs. But what I would recommend if you're either getting started on your job search or you think like in the next year you're going to get started, start networking now. Reach out to people on LinkedIn whose jobs look interesting to you, whether it's, you know, the next job for you or that might be like your dream job down the line, and just shoot them a message. Some of them may not respond, but a lot do. I can tell you this from personal experience, and they're happy to share about what they do and give advice to you. And take advantage of every networking opportunity that you have. I personally have never gotten a job just cold applying to jobs. It's always been through knowing somebody through somebody, or, you know, making a connection, even just virtually on LinkedIn, and like connecting with somebody, seeing that we're in the same kind of groups, responding to the same type of content, and just reaching out to connect with them. I think it's so valuable because when it comes time to actually apply for that job, you have a referral, an inside connection that can help you get there. And so I know it's definitely a scary prospect, networking, especially when you've been like very insular, focused on your research for many years, but just start doing it, and with practice you'll get more comfortable. And it's super, super valuable. That would be my best advice.
So much, Kelsey. Paul, you want to share with us?
Yeah, I'll definitely echo what Kelsey said. Definitely reach out, especially if you know the type of job that you're interested in. I'll use my current position at the National Weather Service. In case you haven't noticed, things have changed a lot since January for applying with the federal government, and it's changed a huge amount. And they've sent us a lot of resources in-house on how to apply, or ways to format your resume and that sort of thing. But I don't know if that message is really reaching that wider audience. And so there was an undergraduate that one of my former advisors at Arizona referred to me. But yeah, she sent me her resume and asked like, hey, how do I apply for a job as a meteorologist in the Weather Service? And I was able to kind of like direct her to some of the different resources that they've made available to us, and kind of gave her some pointers on her resume. So, you know, crossing my fingers for her. But I don't think it hurts to, you know, if you're interested in, say, the Colorado Basin River Forecast Center, go find our email addresses, which are on there, and email people. I think you'd be surprised how helpful people want to be, and how appreciative folks are to new people that are reaching out and wanting to learn more about the job before applying, and seeking any kind of guidance. I think there's just a lot of helpful people out there. So yeah, I would recommend, if you see a job listing, go to that website, see if there's folks you can contact, look on, say, like LinkedIn, to see if there's connections within your own networks that already exist, and leverage those. But yeah, definitely try to be as proactive as you can before you press like that submit button on your application.
Thank you, Paul. Kelsey?
I went already, but I agree with what Paul said. That's great.
Yeah, sorry. Ellen, I apologize.
Yeah, I agree completely, especially with just the networking. If you're curious about an institution or an organization or an outreach program, networking is also a fantastic opportunity for practicing those communication skills. So not just kind of listing off all the things you can do. Folks are going to know that, but if somebody asks you a pointed question about your research or what you do or anything, being able to answer that question directly is a really critical skill that I know a lot of employers look for when they're interviewing. So being able to tailor how you communicate science to a specific audience is really important, and networking is a awesome opportunity to do that. And then the other thing I'll mention too is also think about volunteering. So getting connected with these networks, as Kelsey mentioned, volunteering is a way of networking, and it also allows you to kind of peek inside an organization or an institution before you actually commit to having that be your job. I was really fortunate. I was able to volunteer for science for the USGS. And for me, that was really reinforcing of, you can have those conversations and talk with people and kind of hear what these different, organizations are like. But being able to volunteer, you really get a sense of how they work. And then also it's just, really good for networking and then also potentially, getting some recommendations for in the future. So just thinking outside the box as far as making those connections.
Thank you, Ellen. Ray?
I think that, as everyone in the panel has been saying, the network is crucial. And one of the best ways to increase your network, in my opinion, is attending professional events or trade shows that are specific to the industry you're targeting. Companies usually have booths, and sometimes they have some of the managers and some of the people in leadership there because they are showcasing their company and they're eager to meet not only clients but also potential employees for the company. So it is a great way to connect, and a lot of the time they're hiring. So you might just step into a conversation with a potential hiring manager, and I think that would be fantastic. There is a saying that it's a Colombian saying, basically says that the face of the saint does the miracle. So it is easier when you are comparing a lot of highly qualified candidates when you know one that like, hey, I do like this person. And I do think that the skill set is critical and is very important. But if you are going to be working together, that cultural fit is very important as well. So if you were able to connect with somebody in the organization, you were able to talk to them, and there is that kind of that, I don't know if call it synergy, but if that you like each other, so that you're gonna enjoy the work that you're doing, and people are gonna be happy to have you working there, that will make your case way more stronger. Even if you don't have the experience, there are things that can be learned. So you don't need to have all of the checklist that they have, because people can learn. And if there is that good communication and there is that good cultural fit, I think that helps a lot. I think that LinkedIn is very helpful to find some of the openings that are happening, but it's also a good opportunity to start branding yourself. So if you have an accomplishment in your research or in an organization that you are doing volunteering, that you're volunteering, or any accomplishment, you showcase that. Because when people are looking into that, at least I do look into the LinkedIn of the pages that of people I'm wanting to work with, and it is exciting to see, like, oh, this person is able to do this, and this, because not all the things that you have done and accomplished fit in a resume, especially for industry jobs where you want to have a 1 or 2 page resume. Then I think it is important to have these additional places where you can showcase all the good accomplishments and good work that you have been doing.
Thank you, Ray. Thank you so much, our panelists. I'll say some of my key takeaways would be that you should start early. Make sure you're connecting. It's your cue to visit that exhibition booth at the next conference you're attending. GSA is coming up, AG is coming up. Ensure you visit that exhibition booth, talk to people, and also maximize LinkedIn. LinkedIn helped me get my last internship opportunity. It's a very good platform. Sell yourself, connect with prospective employers, connect with companies that you're prospecting for. And I think these are really good insight from our panelists. Thank you so much. We have a few questions already from our audience, and I'll get started into them. So one of our first question, which I think we've already answered, but Jorge can maybe verbalize it or discuss it generally, is that for panelists that already have PhD, would you recommend pursuing a PhD if the work you plan to do is not academic? Do you want me to go again?
Sure, I can give it a shot. You know, that's a really good question. I've thought a little bit about this because for my job, and I would say for a lot of federal positions, a PhD isn't required, and I think oftentimes it's not an impediment to advancing. Like definitely get your master's degree, but a PhD not so much. But what I really like about having a PhD is that I do have some options. If if I did decide to go back to academia, or when I'm working with some researchers and just being able to have that experience when working with like manuscripts that are being prepared and that sort of thing, I think has been valuable. But yeah, I think you know, if you're like, hey, I'm definitely never going back to academia, I'm not going to go that route. It's not a super required thing, at least from my perspective.
I would add that while I don't think having a PhD has hurt my career, like I think it has elevated it a little bit more quickly than if I did have a master's degree, for example. There are jobs that I've applied to in the past that are just like, nope, we're not gonna consider you because you're overqualified. And so if you know where you want to go with your career, and if it is in something where you don't see a lot of other people having PhDs, like that might be an indication to you that maybe you don't need it. But there are many opportunities, like Paul was saying, that, you know, they do value PhDs. It just really depends kind of which direction you want to go post grad school.
And I would like to add just two words to it. I mean, once you have a PhD, you are a domain expert. And that is a huge asset that you have on your end. And I really like what Paul was saying, that that gives you more options. So you have options in the private sector, but if you go out into the industry, and it might happen that you don't like it, because I saw one in one of the questions that was asking, what do you miss about the life in academia? And the level of stress is different. So, for example, if you enjoy doing research, but you like to take more time to fully analyzing the scope of the problem, and you want to have like, hey, I want to fully resolve this, and I'm very excited about this. With the industry, sometimes something that is very challenging is that with the pace and the limitations of time and resources, you might not be able to fully address that problem in the way that you would like it, and the stress is different, and also you have additional pressure. So for example, in academia, you get a grant for 4 years, even though that's stressful, that gives you peace of mind for 4 years or for 2 years. In industry, one of the most stressful things is that you have to be alive in the market, and if the market is very competitive, then you need to keep looking for options. So having a PhD, in my opinion, is a great sense. I mean, it's important to have those additional opportunities, and I do think that a lot of industries value that, even in consultants. If you have a PhD and you also have that business mindset, I think you're a very powerful candidate, so it's not gonna hurt you.
Thanks for sharing, Ray. I just wanted to reiterate that any of our panelists can jump on any of these audience questions. Thank you so much. So the next question is that how can graduate students and postdocs that are looking for job in the industry stand out in their applications? Simply like, how can scientists more effectively communicate their skills in a resume that is aimed for these industry positions?
Well, I can speak to this. I recently was on the job market. I just started my new role in in May. So I was on the job hunt not too long ago. So I'm familiar with how terrible the job market is right now. But one thing that I found really effective, and I actually learned it from a podcast that I had been listening to, was, you put in your application, make sure you're tailoring your applications to the jobs that you're applying for, using their same keywords in your resume, things like that. Make sure you're not using ChatGPT to write everything. Like, even if you use it as a basis, please do tailor it, because we can tell on the other side that you've just had ChatGPT. But then something I found really effective was figuring out who the hiring manager was for that role after submitting an application, and then sending them a message on LinkedIn or via email and just saying, hey, I just applied for this role. I'm so excited about this. Put in a few snippets about what I was particularly excited about at the job, and said that, I was really looking forward to getting the chance to hopefully speak with them. And I had so many people message me back after doing that. And I had a couple of like meetings that were pre-interviews, so the interview process. And I think it just helped, like Jorge was saying, put a face to who I was amongst the pile of like 200, 500 applications, right? And so I found that to be a super effective tool. It does take more time. And so make sure you're doing the work for your application on the actual application side, but then for the ones that you really are excited about, reach out to them, network with them. Maybe try to network beforehand, before you see a job go up, if you really want to work for a certain company. So, but yeah, it really all goes back to that networking, I think.
Thank you, Kelsey. Anyone else wants to add to that?
I would just chime in and say, don't sell yourself short on things. I think a lot of us, when we're applying, like Jorge was saying, you're an expert, at this point. So give yourself that credit. Just because I don't program every single day doesn't mean that I'm not a good programmer. I think, just don't sell yourself short. If you have skills, you're probably better than you think at them.
Thank you, Paul. Yeah, go ahead, Ellen.
Add to similarly tailoring those skills, even if they're not like your number one skill sets, when you're looking at postings for jobs, pulling out those specific skills that you align with really well and highlighting those, kind of to Kelsey's point of tailoring your resume, will set you apart. Because just as you're writing a thoughtful, cover letter and tailoring your resume, the folks that are hiring positions, they're being really specific about what they're putting in their job postings. And so if you talk to them directly, they're more likely going to say, this person is really interested in this. And then if you, fold on top of that, an enthusiastic cover letter, reaching out, that I do think that sets you apart.
Thank you, Ellen. So one of our audience is asking, how long in advance should you start applying for industry jobs? Months, years? What would you advise?
Whenever you're interested, I would go for it. That's, I think one thing is, like, even if you think something is, maybe you're not fully into a particular job, but you're thinking, oh, this is interesting, it doesn't hurt to apply. And if you get an interview and get to talk with some folks and it doesn't feel right, you don't have to take the job. Or maybe you meet these people and you're like, oh man, this job is way cooler than I thought it would be. Maybe you just stumbled into something great. So yeah, I would say when you find something you're interested in, go for it.
Thank you, Paul. Anyone else wants to add to that?
I would just say give yourself a good buffer. If you need to have another job, for visa reasons, for whatever, financial reasons, when you're done with your current assistantship or schooling, make sure you give yourself enough time. Don't wait till like the last month when you're defending and then be like, I'm going to find a job this month. You're not. The job market is moving a little bit slower now. People are finding it harder to find jobs. So make sure you give yourself plenty of time. And like Paul said, if you see something interesting now and you're not graduating till May, still apply. Like, if you're a great candidate and they want you, they will wait for you. So definitely don't sell yourself short in that respect.
Got stuff in there now, but you think they would all fit in?
Thank you, Kelsey. Anyone else wants to say something before I go to the next audience question?
Yeah, just one small comment. So, for example, if you are a PhD candidate that you completed all your work, if there is a position that aligns well with your skill set and
So,
something that you will love
you want me
working
to
on,
copy the worksheet?
I will say go ahead and apply. And a lot of the times, especially larger organizations, they will let you finish your PhD even if you're working for them. So if you're just missing your dissertation, that's something that you can complete. It doesn't matter if you finish your PhD in 4 years versus 6 years. At the end of the day, that company is giving you the value that you deserve. So if you find, so I think a lot of the times it's about timing. So if you feel the time is right and you are almost to that completion point, I would say go ahead and apply and don't hesitate about it.
Thank you, Ray. So we are almost running out of time, but I think I would just ask our last question here. Do industry jobs still give the opportunity to learn certain software or skills on the job, or would they only go for candidates with prior experiences or certifications?
You'll learn a ton on the job. Like, I don't think anybody is expecting you to come in. I know we don't expect anybody to come in and run our software. I don't think anybody's teaching it or anything like that at the university level. So, yeah, no, you'll learn a ton on the job.
We will also teach you, it does depend on the job. Like if you're gonna, be a hydrologist, we do expect you to have a background in hydrology. But like, a lot of the specific software or things we'll teach you. And then we also will give you a budget to go continue education year after year. And so you can continue to upskill and do different things. And that's pretty common in a lot of different companies. They will allow for certain types of continuing education or additional advanced degrees if you want to keep going.
You, anyone else wants to add anything to that? Okay. So maybe I can just ask like one more question before we round up then. So I know we've answered this through our conversations, but if we can just like wrap it up by just giving an advice, a word of advice or two from each of our panelists on how graduate students can market themselves from now, just like a wrap up from each of our panelists, your advice, your word of advice to the students listening.
I think my biggest piece of advice would um, be yourself, be confident. You know, you've done the work to get to this point, and you're valuable. So, yeah, don't be afraid to show it, and don't be afraid to keep learning, or maybe stretch yourself a little bit.
Eileen, do you
Yeah,
want to go next?
I just
Just
wanted.
go ahead. Sorry.
Yeah, sorry. I just wanted to say I agree with that completely, and don't be afraid to take other opportunities as well, because even if the opportunity doesn't work out the way that you think it should or could, there's still a really valuable learning experience. So just aggregate, collect as many experiences as you can.
Yeah, and as you market yourself, I think it's important to keep in mind that there is a reason why a federal organization or a private industry is sponsoring the research you're doing. So keep that in mind that the efforts you're doing, all the skill set that you have, has a lot of value in the industry. So make sure to find the right words to translate that to the industry. And a good practice is always try to talk to about your research to somebody who has no idea about that field, and that if that person is able to find the relevancy of that work that you're doing and can identify some of the skill sets, like, oh yeah, that doesn't seem to be something straightforward and it is important, I think that will help you to communicate to and translate your skill set from academia to the industry and have a strong resume and strong communications that will yield in jobs.
And I'd just add that your PhD is just the beginning. You're just finishing school. There's so much out there from like other types of research to other cool technologies and jobs that you can take that, to be honest, I had no clue even existed when I was finishing my PhD. The work that I do now is related to my PhD, but it's not that same subtopic and niche, area of research. And so don't limit yourself to things that you've done just because you did your PhD research on them. All those skills are transferable to so many different places. And so if something interests you, but you might not have that niche domain expertise in it, still explore it, investigate it. There's so many more things out there to learn and things that you can contribute to that are just not limited to what you've specialized in today.
Thank you so much. And that's our time there. I will hand over to Megan to give the closing remarks.
Yeah, I just want to once again thank all of our panelists for their time and their expertise and their energy that they shared with us today. I'll thank all the participants. We had a lot of great audience engagement. I'm sorry we didn't get to everyone's questions, but there were a lot of great ones. So we appreciate your engagement and we hope that you will join us for the upcoming webinars. Again, one in October and one in November. And you can see all that information on the H3S website as well as the Quasi website. And I'll just pause for a minute to see if Julia, is there anything else you'd like to add before we close?
No, thanks so much again, everyone, and have a good rest of your afternoon.
Great. Thanks so much.
Thank you.